So I thought twice about doing this video, especially with the title, but it was the first one that sprung to mind, and it is quite fresh in mind at the moment. Probably not good to do a video mid-mental breakdown, but anyway, let's go with it. And I also thought if it's gonna help one other person, then let's do it. And let's chat about how to navigate muppets and come out smiling afterwards. Because the more I work for myself and the longer I do this, the more I've come to realise, especially after stopping drinking actually, is how much two very conflicting feelings can coexist at the same time. You can be hugely morals driven and really want to do your best and always trying to be better and be really, really kind. And you can also feel like you want to punch some people in the face. And that doesn't make you a bad person, because the reason that you're probably feeling like that is that some sub-average human has projected their own shortcomings onto you and expecting you to absorb said shortcomings. Because it's easier for them to do that, for them to then to sit in their own discomfort and work through their own issues and become a better person themselves. So whilst it's not your problem to deal with, it can feel very raw, very unjust, and very, very unfair. So what do we do to mitigate that and to walk through it so that we come out as the better person on the other side? So I'm no psychologist, I'm just I was gonna say entrepreneur, yuck, I hate that word. I'm just an entrepreneur by myself trying to get better at these things and a human, as opposed to, you know, some form of big psych evaluation. So hopefully these human points that I work to might help some of you guys too. So what do I do to stop this happening? So the first off is to try and avoid those kinds of people in the first place. And I know that sounds unbelievably obvious, but there is a bit of framework behind it for me. Well, again, I hate that word framework, but go with me. The first really important thing to do is have some values, specific designed values that you integrate into yourself if you're a freelancer, or your business if you're a business owner, or just yourself as a human being. And I don't mean some crappy going to ChatGPT and saying, give me 5 words that work well in marketing because I want to come up with some values. I mean putting some proper thought into these values that define you, define your character, and define what you're trying to achieve. Because that is a big, big anchor point. And not only does it give you an anchor point to yourself and what you need to uphold and make yourself accountable to behaving like, but it also helps give you a recipe for the type of person that you want to surround yourself with. So when we have our 6 values, which are empathy, patience, diligence, ambition, passion, joy. Empathy, patience, diligence, ambition, passion, and joy. If you slice me in half, that is like literally what is through me, through and through me. It took years to get to that point, to understand A, how important values were, and B, to actually choose which ones we go with, or I go with. And within each of those, there's underlying missions and all of that kind of jazz. But those are the 6 words that define Interim and define me as a person and as a business owner. But that doesn't just define us, because what it does is it gives me a foundation for the type of people that I want to interact with on behalf of Interim. So every freelancer we come into contact with and every client we now come into contact with and prospect, we will vet based on those values to try, where we can, to mitigate coming across muppets and having to deal with muppets. Now, it's not a fail-safe, obviously, and I have made some catastrophic mistakes in terms of not having values in the first place and then not sticking to them when I've allowed clients through the door, or people or freelancers, anyone into my life in general. However, since we've integrated these values, it has really helped. It does really, really, really help. And now within a few moments of meeting someone, you know, or I know very quickly, whether or not they uphold those values, whether they are part of, could be part of the DNA of the type of person that I like to interact with, or whether they're going to be a pain in the ass, simple as. And if they fall into the pain in the ass category, goodbye. So occasionally people do, muppets do, slip through the net. So what do we do when that happens? How do we deal with it? What does it feel like? And how do we come out of the other side smiling and smelling of roses? So if your brain is like me, your brain is like mine. The default setting is to ruminate like insanity. My brain can catastrophize bigger and better than any Steven Spielberg film you've ever seen. When I latch onto a thought, I will go over and over and over it again. If I've been pushed or felt something is unjust or unfair or wrong or not in line with the core values, and it will be like, you know, this world's strongest magnet ever is just attaching to my thoughts and my brains, and it'll do it in my brain, and it'll just keep going, and it'll keep going, and it'll loop, and I'll make up conversations, and I'll catastrophize, and I'll write and rewrite emails in my brain before I even got to my laptop. It's painful, and it's draining, and most importantly, it's distracting, and it's really bloody frustrating when it distracts you from all of the other stuff that's really, really good. Because if you actually really enjoy what you do, and you actually have 90% of the people and things that you do on a daily basis is really good, you then become consumed by these interactions with muppets. And it's really, really hard to break that. So how do we do it? How do we break away from that feeling of, oh my gosh, this should never have happened? The art of progressing through these situations is understanding why they happen in the first place. And by having you define values, you can at least say, right, I am feeling especially peeved because of a certain individual or a situation or whatever it might be, because that's really pushed a certain value of mine. It doesn't solve the problem, but it gives you that first foot to jump off on your first route to navigating through the pain. So if you find yourself stuck in these thought cycles, like I have been, and over the years, especially when I was still drinking, actually, I would get stuck in these thought cycles for not just hours, but days and weeks and months. And the second I woke up to the second I went to sleep, the thing that had got stuck in my brain, or the interaction, or whatever it might be, the scenario I was finding myself in that was tricky, would be there permanently. And it's all-consuming. So how do we get out of it? So the way they described it on a podcast this morning, which was brilliant, and I'll link it in the description below, was that we need a circuit breaker. So to stop the thought. So how do we stop the thought in its tracks so we can deviate and go back onto something that's going to be growth, and so that we can park this particular worry, turn it into an everyday problem and progress. But how do we do that, especially as solo workers, solopreneurs, or whatever you want to call it? Now, the best way I've found, and I still struggle with this and I still have to work on it, but I try to talk to myself as though I'm talking to a friend. So if a friend came to me with the same situation and explained it in the way that I explain it to myself, i.e. with these ridiculous Steven Spielberg style catastrophes, I would tell them to chill the frick out, because it's not true. What you're describing to yourself is a completely over-egged version of the real events. So start it at the beginning, strip it right back, and go, right, okay, what are the facts? What facts do I have right in front of me that relate to this situation that will help me move forwards and park it? And once you're dealing with fact as opposed to interpretation, then you can start to kind of really gently peel yourself away from this thought that's kind of keeping you trapped in this circuit. You can then start to work out what is actually genuinely the worst thing that could happen. Now, I learned this tip from a therapist, and it was honestly brilliant. Because when you play out the worst case scenarios in most things, they're actually not deal breakers. And I'm not talking about health and things like that here. This is very much a day-to-day work type of environment. So, for instance, it could be a client not paying an invoice. It could be someone pulling out of a project last minute. It could be something relating to that that's really ground your gears, but you feel very heavy. But the data is telling you, right, if they never, ever pay that invoice, ever, will it ruin my business? Probably not. Will it ruin anything else? Will my entire career that I've built to date be over? Probably not. You know, I'm sure there's other, one-off scenarios where it might be horrendous, but likelihood is it'll be phenomenally annoying. It'll be a distraction. It'll harm you in the short term, maybe, but it will not change the game long term. And once you get to grips with the real worst case scenario, you can take giant leaps forward out of this feeling. And what that starts to do is give you the most valuable tool to project you out of the end of this stuff. And the most valuable tool you can get your hands on, which I flipping love, is perspective. Perspective is everything. And as soon as you realise how first world the majority of your problems are, you really start to navigate through these situations quickly. So really, this is coming from a reformed victim, okay? So when I first started working for myself, I was awful. Everything was the hardest ever. Everything happened to me. The market was really hard. Sales was really hard. Clients were a nightmare, etc., etc. As soon as I flipped the switch and started working and took back control of my own actions, my own brain, looked at the perspective of, yeah, they're a bit crap actually, but actually I have the control not to have to deal with that person, or I have the control to go out and find some more clients, to do outreach, to film video content, to do all of this other stuff. It actually drags you out of victim and puts you into self-control mode. And as soon as you get perspective, as soon as you start to walk out of victim and into realist and take back that control, the people who have made you feel that bad all of a sudden start to shrink. And as a therapist described to me just the other day, look at those people who have caused you all of this pain, or that you felt pain because of these people, and they'll just start to shrink. They'll just start to shrink, and you can flick them off into the distance and continue on your merry day. Final part of the puzzle. We've gone through having your values to anchor to, getting out of thought cycles, or getting into thought cycles and then getting out of them, getting a circuit breaker, getting perspective, and then the power move at the end of it is seeing these situations as fuel for your future. So the entire reason that I'm recording this is because I've just got out of one of these thought cycles and I've been in it for about 3 days. Now, 3 days is nothing compared to what I used to be like. That I used to be weeks, months, etc. But 3 days I'm all right with. I say 2.5 because the other half of the day has been the fuel part. So within every single challenge is opportunity. Every single challenge is learning. So what can you take from that situation that has ground your gears, what that interaction with that complete pleb has made you feel like, and how can you navigate through the fire, come out the other side and see it as fuel? What that looks like for me is to firstly feel sorry for the douchebag on the other side of it and think, you've just demonstrated exactly how I never, ever want to act, ever in my life. So thank you for that. You've given me a gift of realization of what real sub-average, mediocre human beings look like. So that's one learning, and that's fuel for my future. The second is to just work so bloody hard that I end up with so many people in my life that I dilute the muppets. So that if I have one muppet in there and I've actually got a ton of brilliant clients and amazing freelancers and contracts coming out of our ears, that idiot can kick up as much of a fuss as they like, but the grand impact they have on the rest of my day and the rest of my being is minimal. So dilute them. Dilute them. So I'm no expert in this by any stretch. I'm just someone who used to be stuck in victim mode and has realised that to genuinely live my dream, which this is my dream, I have to take control of this. Because if you don't do that, you relinquish control to others who don't hold themselves to as higher esteem as you hold yourself. And by doing that, you dilute your ability to grow, you dilute your ability to progress, and you end up really bloody miserable. And that's just not fun for anyone. So hopefully this video's helped. It wasn't designed to be a rant, it was designed to be a little bit of practical advice as to how to navigate dickheads and come out smiling. Because when you do, the world is a very, very cool place. So remember, keep being amazing.